Let's continue. There's a tender scene here when Zoraida's father expresses incomprehension. The renegade explains with highly figurative language, "I'll have you know that she is a Christian. She has been the file to our chains and has granted us freedom from our captivity. She is here with us of her own accord, filled with joy, I imagine, to find herself in this state, like one who escapes from darkness to light, from death to life, from agony to glory." Notice this Neoplatonic rendering of the flight of Zoraida. This movement from darkness to light is a fundamental metaphor in Don Quixote. Zoraida's father reacts incredulously. "Is what this man says true, my daughter?" And now, finally, Zoraida speaks for herself. "It is. My desire has never been to leave you or to do you harm, but rather to do good by myself." Suddenly, the father attempts suicide. As soon as the Moor heard this, with incredible quickness, he threw himself headlong into the sea, where no doubt he would have drowned if the long and cumbersome robes that he was wearing had not held him above the water momentarily. The Christians rescue Zoraida's father, depositing him, along with the other Moors, on a cape, which the Moors called that of Cava Rumia, which in our language means evil Christian woman. Two key points here. First, the geography is symbolic. Cervantes is rewriting the myth of the fall of Spain to the Moors in 711 AD, always understood as a punishment for the rape of La Cava by the last Visigothic king, Rodrigo. According to myth, La Cava's father, Count Julian, took his revenge by helping the Moors invade Spain. Cervantes inverts several aspects of this myth, especially by having Zoraida choose to flee with her Christian lover, leaving her father behind as a kind of impotent Count Julian. Second, note how the father completely transforms himself, insulting his daughter in a visceral way. "O shameless wench, misguided girl, where are you going, blind and thoughtless, under the influence of these dogs, our natural enemies? Damn the moment I begot you, and damn the gifts and comforts with which I raised you." Zoraida's answer underscores her decision to convert to Christianity. "Even if I had chosen not to come with them and to remain at home, it would have been impossible for me to do so, according to the urgency with which my soul has made me do this, which seems to me as right, O my beloved father, as you think it wrong." So our heroes embark for Spain, but during the night, illuminated by the light of the moon, which was shining clearly, some French pirates sight them, and they do not respond to their shouted questions as to who we were and where we were sailing to and from where we were coming. Thus, for having shown them the discourtesy of not responding to them, the French fire a special type of artillery, which came with chains, thus destroying their boat's mast. When the pirates approach, the renegade throws Zoraida's jewels into the sea, and for a moment the captive even fears that the pirates are going to rape her. But miraculously, they do not. According to our narrator, this is because the desires of those people do not extend to more than money. Then the pirates set them free, and as the beautiful Zoraida embarked, the captain, moved by I know not what mercy, gave her about 40 gold escudos. The French continued their journey to the Huguenot Republic of La Rochelle on the Atlantic coast, and our heroes continue to the Strait of Gibraltar. Finally, our Christians reach the coast of Spain and climb up a high and craggy mountain in search of a settlement. During this last phase of the voyage, we get an asinine detail as the captive becomes Zoraida's beast of burden. At one point, I carried her on my shoulders. It also seems that Cervantes wants us to reconsider the pastoral genre and the role of Andrés, because the shipwrecked crew are looking for some shepherd's huts, but what they find is an armed young man. We saw at the foot of a cork tree a young shepherd at rest and idly carving a stick with his knife. When the boy sees the renegade and Zoraida, he runs away shouting, "Moors! Moors have arrived! Moors! Moors! To arms! To arms!" Eventually, he appears with the cavalry that guards the coast, and one of the captives recognizes his uncle among these men. Noteworthy here is the contrast between how this scene concludes and the chaos we saw during a similar scene in the Sierra Morena, where the barber was kicked by his own ass. Here, all is peace, all is order. They pulled us up on their haunches, and Zoraida rode on those of the horse of the Christian captive's uncle. Geography here highlights another contrast. Our heroes have reached Vélez Málaga, a town due south of Córdoba, just southeast of Granada, and the Alpujarras region. In other words, precisely the area of the most violent Morisco rebellion in Andalusia towards the end of the 16th century. They go directly to the church to thank God, and as soon as Zoraida entered, she said there were faces there that resembled those of Lela Marién. This reminds us of the contrast between the symbolism of Spanish Catholicism and the iconoclasm of both Islam and Protestantism. The renegade went to the city of Granada to be readmitted by the Holy Inquisition to the blessed fellowship of the church. The captive concludes by reminding us of the biblical symbolism of Mary and Joseph, which is the basis of his story. I bought this animal on which she rides, serving her for now as father and squire, and not as husband. Let's review. The Captive's Tale is the last symphonic movement of Cervantes' great novel. The rest of the text will be a series of thematic, theoretical, and symbolic summations. What do we make of this final and relatively autobiographical story? More than 30 years ago, Luis Andrés Murillo, a great critic and editor of Don Quixote, argued that Cervantes conceived The Captive's Tale as his novel's climax, the captive being Cervantes' exemplary figure sine qua non. Also important is the historical context provided by the Battle of Lepanto, that glorious defense of the Christian West against the Muslim East, in which Cervantes was always proud to have fought, but which coincided with the tragic decline and fall of the Spanish Empire in the war with England and the 80-year quagmire in the Netherlands. The captive's example indicates that the trajectory between the victory at Lepanto and the disaster of the Armada was marked out not only by strategic mistakes, but also by some degree of moral disorientation, hence the initial representation of so many dead caballeros, many of them beheaded. Nevertheless, The Captive signals Cervantes' hopeful concept of a renewed sense of chivalry, unlike the crazy Hidalgo, for example, who deals so violently with the muleteers at the first end, the merchants of Toledo, the Basque, and even his own squire. Cervantes' new knight is distinguished by his fidelity and by his transcultural impulses, especially by the fact that he is open to religious dialogue, accepting Allah and Lela Marién, for example, as figures common to both Moors and Christians. And unlike Fernando, the new caballero is not an aggressive dandy. Indeed, he is literally a captive, determined to respect the wishes of a woman and fulfill his promises to her. Notice also that Zoraida Maria's vision, which expresses her religious conversion and which ultimately leads to the captive's own spiritual and physical salvation, is in point of fact the only miracle in an otherwise profoundly historical tale, which, for its part, concludes a novel famous for its realism. It's as if the indefatigable will of Zoraida Maria were what Cervantes really wanted his readers to admire the most. Nevertheless, notice how unstable religious identity is throughout The Captive's Tale. It would seem that personal liberty is as important to the characters as any religious or ethnic identity. And finally, we should note how every step forward throughout this narrative expresses the idea that commerce, along with some kind of cultural or ethnic mixing or salad, offers ways to avoid violence. In its representation of a non-colonialist foreign policy for Spain, Cervantes' art of the novel insists on the art of exchange.